Most of the calls are very pro-vaping, but, if that's the verdict of the nation in the national conversation, so be it. 08085909693. Is it the acceptable face of nicotine absorbment? You know what I mean. I don't really know what I mean at all. I still feel most peculiar after vaping about 25 minutes ago. Deborah Arnott is Chief Executive of health charity Action on Smoking and Health. Hi, Deborah.
Hello.
And Sarah Jakes, who was a smoker for 34 years, switched to vaping a few years ago. She's also a trustee of the New Nicotine Alliance, which is a group of consumers and academics interested in issues relating to nicotine. Hello, Sarah.
Good morning.
Just shows you, Deborah, how strong that old nicotine stuff is if you haven't had it for a while and you take it in as I did, and I don't really feel at all well. It's worrying, isn't it? Even through vaping, what we're doing to our bodies.
Well, no, it's obvious. If you quit, then you shouldn't go back, and you will find the nicotine.
It was frontline journalism,
but it's not the acceptable face of smoking, which someone said earlier.
Yeah.
Actually, there isn't any smoke, and nicotine isn't toxic, isn't particularly harmful. But if you've quit, you shouldn't go back to using it, because basically it's best to quit completely. But we know that it's actually the smoke that does the harm, not the nicotine. Unfortunately, more than half of adults in Great Britain are a bit confused about this and think that electronic cigarettes are as harmful or more harmful than cigarettes. And it's important to realise they're not. It's much, much less harmful than smoking.
And not as antisocial?
Well, that's for you to say, or Sarah. Some people don't like the smell of the vape smells either, but it's certainly secondhand smoke is harmful. The smell of vaping is not.
Yeah, Sarah.
I think when it comes to that, it's down to manners. I mean, certainly there are some people who don't like the smell of vapour, but it's not harming people. And I think at some point, we've got to say. These are almost entirely ex-smokers, people who have stopped smoking. They've turned to something which is massively less harmful to themselves with no known harms to other people. So can we not really tolerate the odd whiff of strawberry?
Whiff of strawberry.
Or cherry?
Or cherry or strawberry. What's your flavour, Deborah? Are you a vapor?
No, I'm not. But Sarah, what's your flavour?
Well, at the moment I'm on rhubarb and custard, and I'm just about to start a nice key lime pie.
What about the science? The science is by no means settled on this, is it, as to how dangerous vaping is?
Settled is, it's very difficult to prove a negative.
Science is never settled. All science is tentative, yes, but there are...
But the Royal College of Physicians has estimated that electronic cigarettes are likely to cause at most 5% of the harm caused by smoking. And that's why I say if you're not smoking, then don't bother to try vaping, because obviously you're inhaling things into your lungs. That's not harmless, but it's very, very much less harmful than smoking. So if you're a smoker, and we know that actually this is now one of the main ways that smokers are trying to quit, and we would encourage them to do that. Not only can they reduce the harms, but in Leicester, the Stop Smoking Service help smokers who come to them and say they want to quit using e-cigarettes. And they say that smokers who switch to vaping are telling them they save up to 90% of the money they used to spend on smoking. So smokers can not only improve their health, but also cut their costs by switching to vaping. We'd rather they quit completely, but if they can't, try vaping.
There's a big cardiology conference in 2016 which came to the conclusion, or it was reported at that conference, that the findings said that e-cigarettes may be far more dangerous than was thought. Bad for your heart. As bad for your heart.
Yeah, well,
I see you're keen to jump in on this one and stamp on it.
Because that was a very poor piece of research.
Was it?
It was not peer-reviewed, and actually the academics behind the Royal College of Physicians report looked at that research and said the conclusions were not justified by the research.
Okay. Well, I'm up for hearing what the nation's verdict is on this, where we are on this one. Michael's in Hove. Hello, Michael.
Good morning, Nicky.
What's your flavour?
I don't have a flavour. I use tobacco flavour, Golden Virginia, something like that.
But tobacco flavour, that's novel.
Well, I'm not trying to avoid key lime pie or strawberries. It's cigarettes I'm trying to avoid. So I don't go for the fancy fruit flavours. And just as a matter of interest, you've had a suck on somebody else's e-cigarette this morning. Obviously, It's giving... as a matter of what strength were they using of the liquid, do you know? Because it comes in all sorts of strength, including zero nicotine.
I don't know. I'll find out. But it felt strong to me because you know what it's like. I don't know if you ever gave up. When the times that I gave up, then went back to a cigarette. It went straight to my head.
I know exactly.
Yeah, in the same way that's gone straight to my head, and I don't feel great. I feel a bit better now than I did 10, 15 minutes ago. But
well, I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
But I mean, my experience was much the same as other callers you had on here before I started smoking at boarding school. And then had an epiphanous moment when I was about 22 and just gave up cold turkey just like that and didn't smoke for 20-odd years. And then these people started coming out saying how side smoke was just as dangerous for you as actually smoking. And at the time I was running a pub in the days that pubs had allowed smoking. Somebody offered me a cigar one day and I thought, well, I might as well have it because if I'm getting all this side smoke anyway, I might as well smoke myself. And then, which wasn't really the best decision, but then carried on smoking until about 4 years ago when I gave up purely for financial reasons, and I gave up with the aid of an e-cigarette. I wouldn't have been able to do it without an e-cigarette. I had tried, because when you wake up in the morning, you'll know as an ex-smoker, that first cigarette, and if you've got a corner shop across from you, you think, oh, damn, I'll go and get myself 10 cigarettes. No, you can do it that way, but you take one puff on your e-cigarette, or in my case, as it is now, an e-pipe, and it goes away with it. So I highly recommend it for people who can't give up cold turkey, which is an extremely strong ask anyway.
Sarah Jakes, is this a health revolution? Is this going to save the NHS in the long term, and all of us thereby loads of money?
Well, I think it is a health revolution. It's been led by consumers and small, innovative businesses, and obviously, I believe the cost per person who continues to keep smoking is £72,000. That's not all the cost to NHS.
What's that? Run that figure by us again. £72,000.
That's the valuation of a quit, basically. I mean, it's not all NHS money, but it includes NHS money. It includes quality of life and things like that. But doubtless, if people are quitting smoking, then they're less likely to get a smoking-related disease. The earlier they can do that, the better, and it will, in the long run, save the NHS money.
Here's Frank in Shipley. Hello, Frank.
Morning, Nicky.
Right, is this a health revolution or revulsion?
Well, I think it is. I smoked cigarettes for over 40 years, at times cigars, and I took to an e-cig about 18 months ago. Carried on having cigarettes when I went to the pub, or when my wife went outside for one. But then 2 months ago, when the legislation changed and the minimum price of cigarettes was put up to about £8.20, and they were only sold in 20s. I thought, right, I'm going to stop, and I have done, and I don't think I'll ever go back. I've discovered this fantastic spearmint flavour, and I just prefer it to cigarettes. Sorry?
I just wanted to come in and say congratulations on switching completely, because there's good evidence that that's actually the way you can best improve your health. If you carry on smoking at the same time, then you don't significantly reduce the toxins you're taking in. So any vapor out there who's still smoking, switch completely.
What about the chemical additives and ingredients in e-cigarettes? I mean, it's all very uncertain. You're like a bunch of evangelicals coming on this morning.
But they're not being combusted.
Happy, clappy vapours.
It's because what makes cigarettes so deadly is that it's smoke. You know, if you're exposed to smoke over a long period of time, you know, in India, people are dying from being exposed to the smoke created indoors by cooking on an open fire. You know, it's the smoke that's deadly.
But nicotine is a poison.
Well, anything is a poison in large quantities. You can die from drinking too much water. It's not, you know, it's actually something which, that's why nicotine replacement therapy has been a licensed medicine for many years and is recognised by the World Health Organization as an essential medicine. You know,
as I say, you can get the liquids come in different strengths of nicotine anyway. You can get a very, very low strength liquid if you so choose. But you still have the satisfaction of sucking on a dummy. That's part of it.
That's very true. It's virtually harmless in the amounts that are used by vapors.
Listen to you lot.
Yeah, and bear in mind, people refer to
it's smoking that. Yeah, Nicky,
can I just make one point?
Yeah, go on.
Just make one point.
Yeah, go on, Michael.
No,
it's actually steam, not smoke, that you're getting inside you. It's like the difference of walking up to an old steam engine. If you suck the smoke coming out of the funnel, it won't be very good for you. But it doesn't matter if you get the steam go all over you.
And Nicky, smoking is a public health disaster. We're still seeing nearly 80,000 people dying each year in England. It kills more people than the next 6 causes of preventable premature death put together. Vaping is so much less harmful that... I vaped about 40 minutes ago, something like that. Why do I feel sick? Because you've not used nicotine for a long time, and what you were doing was taking in the sort of levels of nicotine that someone who's an addicted smoker would be using.
What does that tell you?
That might make you feel sick, but it's not going to kill you.
It's because you've lost your tolerance to it.
Yeah, and it's great, because hopefully that means you're not going to go on to become a regular vapor, or even worse, go back to smoking.
Or like a gateway in. Here's Ken in Birmingham.
Hello, Nico.
Did you get this, vaping?
I just cannot get my head round it. You know, you either smoke or you don't smoke.
Yeah.
Someone goes onto this so-called vaping, you get the various odours if you're following a person.
Yeah.
And then that lady said it doesn't do you as much harm as smoking. She didn't say it does you no harm, and you're just going to get addicted to that.
No, if you're already addicted, it will deal with your cravings. That's the point. Not.
You said it doesn't do you. It does you less harm. You didn't say it does you no harm.
No, and I said that very clearly. I said if you're not a smoker, don't try vaping because it's not harmless.
Well, there you go.
No, she's not talking about that's passerbys. She said that it does passerbys and other people who get a whiff of the strawberry flavour. It's not doing you any harm at all. She made that quite clear.
Who said it's not doing me any harm? If I sit in a room where a person's smoking that constantly,
it's going
to make me feel sick.
It's not smoking. It's not smoking.
Yeah,
it's
but
steaming.
I'm going to inhale it, aren't I? I'm going to be one of these so-called.
It's just like inhaling. It's just like inhaling.
Well, wait a minute. One at a time. What I would say is that there's a massive marketing, advertising, corporate giant push behind this, isn't there? This industry is massive.
But Nicky, the regulations brought in last May mean that almost all advertising is now prohibited. You can't advertise on TV, radio, in print, or on the internet. So there's local advertising. You can see it on buses and on billboards, but there's not the opportunity to advertise it in the same way that cigarettes used to be advertised.
Yeah, but the thing is nicotine. I mean, let's nail this one. You say that it's everything's a poison. I said nicotine is a poison. You say, well, everything's a poison. But it does affect the brain's reward system, doesn't it? Dopamine concentrations, whatever they're called.
There's almost no sign of people who've never smoked using these products regularly. Cigarettes are the crack cocaine of nicotine delivery because of the smoke and the way when you inhale the smoke you can take in vast quantities of nicotine into your lungs. It's much more difficult with e-cigarettes and they deliver more slowly. So just in the same way as nicotine replacement therapy, there's no evidence that it addicts people who were not originally smokers to nicotine and they go on to smoke. The same is true of e-cigarettes, that actually there's no sign that they're leading young people to take up smoking or that adults who've not previously been smokers are using these products regularly.
Ken, go on, come back in here.
Yeah. You know, years ago, we had people in films and on television smoking cigarettes. There was adverts all over the place. And no one said then anything at all about it encouraging youngsters. What you get now, you get people walking down the road with these so-called pipes, whatever they're called, smoking these flavours, and the kids can see them. Of course it's going to encourage them to buy one of these and try, and don't say, well, they have to be 18 before they can buy one. Kids have to be 18 before they can drink alcohol, but they still get their hands on it.
That's a reasonable theory, Ken, but in practice it's not been happening, and these products have been widely used and widely available now for over 7 years, and there's no sign that young people are taking them up in large numbers. The only young people who use them are already smoking.
Are you talking to your dog?
I hope so.
No, listen, I'm quite used to it. I love it. I'm glad your dog's as angry as you are about this, frankly, Ken.
You know, I had to stop. I used to smoke 20 cigarettes one day, 30 the next.
Blimey.
I had to stop smoking. I had to have chemo, and the consultant said, it's not going to... You can smoke, but the chemo is going to be worse if you smoke. And I didn't believe him, and I carried on smoking. Oh, was I ill? And that was in 2009. I haven't had a cigarette since. If someone wants to stop smoking, have chemo. Have a dose of chemo. It won't hurt them.
Well, okay, it's a bit extreme.
Ken, thank you very much indeed. Listen, what's your dog called?
Fred.
Fred. Great name for a dog. All the best to Fred. And Daniel in Mansfield. Hello, Daniel.
Good morning.
What do you make of it? Vaping?
Well, I don't think there's enough research. If you go back 100 years when smoking first became popular, doctors was encouraging everyone to do it, saying it was healthier for you, it would open up your lungs. All I'm seeing now is the same cycle coming through with vaping.
Interesting.
And in regards to people saying, yeah, they're going to be saving money on the cigarette, only because the government haven't got around to putting their pocket on it yet.
David, I understand. Daniel's rather right.
I'm going to come to Adam first of all, then I'll be back with you, because Adam's another believer. Hello, Adam.
Good morning.
Hallelujah. Go on. Make your point.
Well, yeah, a couple of points, actually. There's a big argument that vaping is a gateway to smoking, especially for teens and for people who haven't smoked, per se. I think it's quite the reverse. A point was made earlier, 95% of vapers are ex-smokers who've quit for this safer alternative. So actually, vaping is an exit door from the dangers of smoking for many smokers. I myself was a smoker for 30 years. I smoked, up to 30 a day. And I started vaping 6 years ago, and I haven't touched a cigarette since. And quite frankly, there's no doubt about it. It saved my life. I'm so much healthier now.
Are you? How much money are you saving?
Well, fortunes. I mean, I was paying, myself and my wife both smoked, and we were smoking, as I said, up to 30 cigarettes a day. That was costing us $6,500 a year.
Blimey.
That's a huge chunk of money, no matter how much you're earning.
It is.
And to be honest, vaping, less than a quarter of that, probably less than a fifth of that. More importantly, the health aspect of it. Also, I think this is a real valid point that no one's made yet. I think if the vaping industry was to start today, knowing what it knows now in the current climate with the TPD regulations and what have you, the last thing that they would do is call these e-cigarettes, because I think that association more than anything else has caused all the negativity that surrounds vaping. Mm-hmm. Look at nicotine patches and other nicotine alternatives. They were welcomed by health lobbies because they clearly weren't a cigarette. These are so much more effective as an exit gate for smokers, and yet because they have the word cigarette in the title, there are hugely negative associations. And really, I think that's done more damage to this industry than any one particular other thing.
That's really interesting. What's your flavour?
Well, interestingly, I used vaping as a way out of smoking. So initially, like many vapors, I imagine, it was tobacco. More recently, because we were sort of bombarded with marketing and what have you in the vaping world, I've experimented. So today, for example, I have a biscotti, those little biscuits that you get on the side of your posh coffee in a nice cafe bar.
I know them well.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Well, it's that kind of flavour at the moment. But, yeah, I mean, there's so much more out there. Just one final point I'd really like to make. Everyone knows that teenagers experiment with things that are out of our control. That's the nature of being a teenager. And I'm not encouraging that. I'm saying it's a fact. So isn't it better that teenagers, if they're going to try something, do something which is 95% more safer than cigarettes? Because eventually most of those teenagers won't do it long term anyway.
Presumably, this only works if you've had cigarettes first. Otherwise, you're portraying it as a potential gateway into cigarettes. If they try this, and then they get hooked on the nicotine, which is an addictive drug. Let me throw this one in. just looking at various scientific studies as I talk and as you talk, nicotine has proved to be a gateway drug for other addictive substances. An experiment with mice showed that nicotine had a priming effect in the brain for cocaine. And giving the mice nicotine made the mice, I'm paraphrasing here, into a bunch of coke heads.
Okay, well, I would say two things to that. One, we're not mice. We have a bit more choice than that. And secondly, I was a smoker for 30 years and I never considered cocaine. I think the link, to be honest, is tenuous at best. That's no criticism of you. That's a criticism of the science. I also think you have to look behind the headlines of this science. I mean, the media look for a headline. It's what sells story. It's what gets us interested in news. It hooks us in as much as nicotine does when you're a smoker.
It's a gateway, yes.
Absolutely, yeah. and I'll be honest with you, the media, it pays for them to portray this in a negative fashion because it gives them shock headlines and people therefore buy their publications or read the adverts online. That's the reason that we get so much more negative publicity surrounding vaping than positive, because everyone knows that happy, smiley news stories don't get the attention or the engagement that negative ones do. You've only got to look at on any popular news media site to realise that. So I think, we need to be aware that behind many of these headlines, there are agendas. Who loses out if vaping is successful? Who's the big loser in this? Well, there are two obvious big losers in this. The government through taxes, because they can't tax it, because bottom line is this isn't tobacco. Then they tax the tobacco, not the product. They tax the tobacco. The tax is on tobacco. There's no tobacco in e-cigarette or e-liquid. So the government loses out hugely. Massive pressure on the government on the one hand to want us to be safer and healthier, but on the other hand, if they achieve that, they're going to have a massive hole in their budget every year because there's going to be no tax paid on this.
Good thoughts. And
Secondly, who's the other big loser in this? Well, clearly it's the cigarette companies. I mean, and they can see the future, and the future isn't one that contains tobacco. Everyone knows that. If tobacco was invented today, it would be banned quite clearly. So what are the cigarette companies doing? They're putting a ring of protection around themselves. They're launching their own vaping products to protect themselves, while at the same time putting pressure on governments to come down hard and clamp down hard with really, really negative rules and regulations to imprison the vaping industry, to not allow it to grow exponentially, where it becomes a real danger to them. I mean, you've only got to see the way that the politics and the science of this is going to understand that. And a lot of these scientific surveys that say that vaping is really dangerous are sponsored by tobacco companies. If you follow the trail back, it's not rocket science, but you have to be cynical when you read these.
Things are also sponsored perhaps by e-cigarette companies as well. If only Sir Francis Drake had been a vapor. That's what you're saying. If only they'd, if they'd realised it. You make some really trenchant points, though. I hope you realise that we're not trying to sensationalise this on this station. We're just merely reflecting a debate, which we've seen on the text this morning, and it's because of this we get people like you to come on.
I agree with you, Nicky, and I think the key thing here is a sense of balance. I'm not accusing anyone particularly of anything. I'm just saying that there's a trend towards negativity in terms of news headlines when it comes to vaping. I understand that itself.
I got you. Well, listen, we're hearing from the believers, and thank you very much for your thoughts this morning. Really, really appreciated.